Okay, let's talk about South America region and the numbers that we saw being published yesterday. So as we look at the numbers here for South America, there's a couple of interesting things. As we know, Guatemala has been removed from the list of countries that are eligible to participate this year, and Peru has been added. Now, if we look at last year's visa bulletin that shows the numbers for last year, you can see that Guatemala received 60 selectees, and Peru wasn't in the list last year. And so this year, there's a significant number of additional selectees in Peru. Peruvians have taken their opportunity to take these additional selectees. So we still see high numbers in Venezuela and Cuba, although those numbers are obviously in Cuba is reduced terrifically, and Venezuela in 2020 has got more than last year. So there's been a sort of an adjustment in South America in terms of the distribution of selectee numbers, which is largely because of the additional entries that we would have seen in Peru. You can see that there would have been, a large number of entries in Peru compared to other countries such as Venezuela and Cuba, and the loss of Guatemala. There's also an impact when a country shuffle like this happens. There's an impact to the amount of allocated visas or the quota that the region can receive. I haven't done the numbers on that yet. It's based on the population of the countries that either disappear from the list or come into the list. Now, Guatemala has a population, I believe, around about 17 or 18 million people, and Peru is about 32 million people, I believe, right? So they're roughly similar size countries, but obviously Peruvians seem to enter the visa much more than Guatemalans did. So in terms of the quota, there will be a slight increase in the quota this year, which I haven't fully factored into the numbers yet, but it's only going to be fairly small because the overall increase is about 10 million people, 14 million people or so across the whole region. That's not going to dramatically change the numbers for the region, but it will be a slight difference. Just roughly looking at the numbers, I should imagine that if we considered the populations of this group of countries, we're probably looking at something like, something like 250 million. Let's see, I was just looking at that list of South American countries. So 45, Peru 33, Venezuela 28. So the lion's share are going to be in these countries. So we're probably Brazil, is obviously the biggest South American country. Guatemala, being in Central America, is a fairly large country, would be fairly high on this list if we took the whole region. But let's say let's take out the 212. Yeah, I mean we're going to be talking about something around about 200 million, population. So the increase of 10 million or 14 million, let's say, between the difference between Guatemala and Peru is going to be an upward tick, and it will be, it'll add probably another 100 or 200 visas in the quota, but that's about it. It won't be much more than that. So if you look at these numbers, we can see the distribution is coming from Venezuela, Cuba, and Peru mainly. There's Ecuador has 246. There's a big step down to the other countries. So really the story is about these three countries, right? So Venezuela has, people in Venezuela have got problems right now, right? It's obvious that there are difficulties in even getting an interview because of the political situation in Venezuela. And the political situation is likely to continue to be difficult over the next year, I would say. And so there's a large chunk of the 5,500 selectees in a country where political instability is going to make life difficult for them. So I think the reality is that people in Venezuela are not going to get the same chance of being approved going through the interview process as they would do in any other country. So that's going to increase the number of people that don't respond. It's going to increase the number of people that probably get denied or don't proceed with the process for Venezuela. It's sad, but that's probably a reality, right? In Cuba's always, had difficulties in processing. So this is always a bit of a strange one. You never quite know what response you're going to get from Cuba in terms of the number of people that respond, etc. Again, economically, the costs of going through a process such as this for people in Cuba is going to be significant and difficult. So there's a large chunk of selectees there that will probably say no to the process. They won't proceed with the process. And as for people from Peru, we have to yet see what the reaction will be for people from Peru. Will they proceed? Will they be able to afford the process? Will they go through the process? How difficult will the process be? Will the educational standard there meet the requirements? And we just don't know a lot of those factors. So there's a lot of just region-specific sort of unknowns with regard to the selectees there. So although there are 5,500 selectees, which is this number here for the South American region. And although the derivative rate says that there's about 2,700 cases, so that's each case has on average about 2 people on it in South America. And that could also vary, by the way, with the inclusion of Peru, because the rate of married applicants there could be higher or lower than we're used to in that region. So it could change. So this is just an approximation. But let's say there's 2,700 cases. So there's 5,500 people spread over 2,700 cases. How many of them will proceed? We don't know. In reality, we don't know the answer to that. We'll have to wait and see. I think the reality is that this is the quota at a 3% quota level. As I mentioned just a moment ago, that number is probably going to be higher. Perhaps we might see a quota nearer sort of 1,800, perhaps even 1,900 for the region. But it's going to be in that sort of range. Let's say between the 1,600 and 1,900 range as a quota. So where you've got 5,500 people, if half of them can't proceed because of the country problems in Venezuela, because of Cuba, because of all of those things, then we might get to a position where there's a reasonable chance for fairly high case numbers. But that's all speculation at the moment. And that speculation comes on top of the other sorts of speculation that we've got in this year, such as what will be the localized impact of the pandemic, what will happen with the political situation, and also the new passport rule, etc. So really, it's going to be a guessing game for South America. South America is normally fairly easy to predict, but the rules have changed effectively, this year because of the inclusion of Peru, the removal of Guatemala, and the current situation with all of the bans in place and the pandemic and the election and the passport rule, etc. There's a lot of unknowns. So I'm not in a position where I can say, look, here will be the cutoff. We also the political situation and the lawsuit means that we've lost, the lawsuit in particular means that we've lost October for sure. In terms of interviews, there won't be any interviews in October. The lawsuit is being heard on the 27th of August, and so we'll hope for a positive outcome. If we get a positive outcome, we might be able to get some interviews scheduled in November and December. But if we don't get a positive outcome on that, we'll have to see whether we get an opportunity to have interviews scheduled after January. But again, that's going to be affected by the election process in America. If Trump loses, and Biden's coming in on January 20th, then it's likely that the immigrant bans that are in place at that time will be removed. If, on the other hand, Trump were to win, he could continue the immigrant bans. And the ban that's currently due to expire on December 31st, 2020, could be continued. We just don't know. And so, in this year, more than any other year that I can think of, there's lots of reasons to be very cautious in making predictions, and I don't think anybody should give up at this point. Although obviously, if your case number is over 3,500 or so in South America region, perhaps even a little bit lower than that, you've got good cause to be nervous, but at the same time you can't give up. You're going to have to wait and see what happens during the process. You have to wait and see what happens due to the pandemic, the election process, and so on. Okay, so just a little bit more information that I can give you here. There's an expectation of a constant holds rate. So remember that if there are 2,700 cases spread amongst, let's say, and I don't know this number is correct, this 45XX number, I think that's about the highest case number I've heard is about 45XX. 4,500 range. In that case, we've got something like not quite a 50% holds rate, but that holds rate would continue all throughout the range. So if you're at case number, let's say you're at case number 3,000, for example, there is something less than 1,500 cases in front of you, right? And on those cases, there are 2 people each. But of those 1,500 cases in front of you, if you're at case number 3,000, and this is my approximation, but if you're at case number 3,000, there's 1,500 cases in front of you, many of which won't proceed with the process for various reasons, be it economic, political within the country, or just people change their mind, or whatever the reason. So many of those cases won't go through. So let's say there's only 1,000 cases that that go ahead of you if you're at case number 3,000. You may feel that your chances are bleak at case number 3,000, but actually, if there's only 1,000 cases in front of you that are going to continue, and if the quota is at 1,900 and some of those 1,000 cases would be denied anyway or would stop the process, then maybe you've got a good chance, right? So it isn't sensible or possible to be really specific about where the cutoff would come, if at all. And so I think we're just going to have to keep our minds open to whatever happens next, right? Keep it a little bit positive, think positively, but also realistically. All right. So that's basically where where I'm at with my thinking on South America. I hope that clarifies some of the things that you might be wondering about. Hopefully this video, though short, made sense because you watched the other video, the much longer video that explained in more detail more of the other factors that are coming into play this year, and so you understand that in general. I hope that's the case anyway. All right, give me a like if you enjoyed this video, if it was useful to you, and please make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. It's a good way to get updates about the situation. And please, if you have questions to ask, you can ask them below. But I do far better at answering questions on my blog at BritSimonSays.com. Because it's just so much easier to answer questions over there. The YouTube format of answering questions is awful, and I lose track of the questions, frankly. So yeah, please pop over to the blog and ask your question there, ideally. All right, thank you then. Keep well. Bye bye.